After 25 years of negotiation, the EU-Mercosur Partnership Agreement, or the EMPA, is expected to be in place by the end of 2026, creating one of the world's biggest free trade zones. If approved, the deal will provide a range of beneficial EU trade terms for agri-food products from Mercosur countries, especially for commodities such as beef, poultry, and sugar. Specifically, the deal would allow 99,000 metric tons of Mercosur beef to enter the EU market with a 7.5% duty, while 180,000 tons of poultry and sugar could eventually be imported duty-free. While originally expected to conclude by the end of 2025, in December, the EU's executive was forced to postpone the signing of the free trade agreement with the Mercosur bloc after last-minute opposition from Italy prevented the deal from being concluded. Member states, in particular the larger agricultural producers such as Italy and France, have shared ongoing concerns since the deal's inception about how the deal would impact agriculture and food businesses across Europe. In response to these concerns, EU member state representatives in the Council finally approved the bilateral safeguard clauses for the EU-Mercosur deal on the 5th of March, which would allow the EU to suspend the preferential tariff rates for food imports from Mercosur countries if they exceed a certain level and are deemed harmful to EU producers. The safeguard clauses cover sensitive agri-food commodities such as beef, poultry, dairy, sugar, ethanol, and citrus fruits, which represent the majority of the agri-food products imported into the EU from the Mercosur bloc. But is there a real cause for concern? Well, the Mercosur bloc is already a major supplier to the EU for both beef and poultry, and the agreement will essentially solidify this existing arrangement. Export volumes to the EU are not expected to substantially increase, as exports from Mercosur are already above the cited levels in the agreement. S&P Global Series view is that a significant portion of fresh beef currently imported from Mercosur falls outside current quotas, meaning much of the volume will be shifted from out of quota to in quota. Additionally, increases in domestic poultry production within the EU will likely minimise increases in the volume of chicken and meat imports from Mercosur. It is also our view that the EMPA does not reflect the current trade flows, with the new quota significantly less than the current Mercosur boneless chicken export volumes, while exceeding the current volumes of bone-in cuts. It is still unclear whether there is enough EU demand for Mercosur bone-in cuts to fill the cited quota. In any case, additional volume may help to moderate the current tight domestic supply environment seen in the EU, which is driving up prices to historical highs. In terms of increases to EU cheese exports, Mercosur countries currently only account for around 0.2% of total EU exports, and if quota volumes were achieved in full, this would only account for around 2% of total EU cheese exports. When it comes to citrus, oranges, lemons, and mandarins are categorised as sensitive products under the deal, and safeguard measures apply, and there are no quotas for citrus exports from Mercosur to the EU. Additionally, the European Union also uses an entry price system during certain peak season for fresh citrus fruits, where if the import price of these citrus fruits dips below a specified minimum value, an additional specific duty is imposed on top of the base rate to protect EU producers, so the deal would likely see minimal impacts on these markets. Overall, the EU-Mercosur Partnership Agreement is not expected to impact volume or price in the EU domestic market significantly. However, monitoring its impacts through the bilateral safeguards will be integral to the agreement's success.